Hello and welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to have you join this other episode of the We Connect podcast from Sumadi. Today, we have an amazing episode, right? Today, we will be talking about customization and standardization, right? Basically, tailoring EdTech solutions to institutional needs. And for this episode, we have a panel of participants that have an amazing background when it comes to higher education and particularly proctoring as well. We're talking about our sales team, our commercial team here in the United States. And I'm so pleased and honored to have today with us Jen Roski, Adel Lelo, and Walter Kowalczyk, right? So today we will be having an amazing conversation about, what the market looks like when it comes to the proctoring needs, but also the technology needs in education, right? Together, these remarkable team of individuals constitute an extraordinary panel poised to eliminate us on the latest trends, challenges, and innovations within the realm of higher education, edtech, and of course, proctoring. So, ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts. And as we approach this episode, the promises to take you on a captivating journey through the vast landscape and knowledge about education and technology. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Jan Roski. How are you, Jan, today? Can you give us an understanding on where you're sitting today?
Sure. No, thank you, Raul. Truly honored to be your guest today and to join my colleagues. I'm excited to dive into our conversation. I am today located in Pennsylvania. So, for those out there that know the Poconos, the Appalachian Mountains, I'm about midway between New York City and Philadelphia. So, I am representing the East Coast today.
Nice, Jan. Welcome to the episode. Ale Lelo, where are you sitting today?
Yes, sir. Raul, everybody, thank you so much for having me. Thanks for your time today. I am in beautiful Salt Lake City, Utah, overlooking the Wasatch Mountain front, waiting for the snow to come down so I can go ski. So
Nice,
I guess
Adel.
I represent the closest thing to the West Coast.
Exactly. That is what I was going to say, Adel. I was welcome, Adel. Thank you for joining us. Walter, where are you joining us today from?
Hi, thank you very much for allowing me to be on your podcast today. And I got to tell you, I'm coming to you live from the Midwest. I'm in Northwest Indiana, closest to Chicago.
Close to Chicago, the windy city, right? Indiana is not as windy as Chicago, I guess.
It's not. There's a lot of cornfields here, though. I'll tell you that.
Okay, never been there. I look forward to actually visiting one day. Welcome everybody. Thanks again for joining us in this conversation. Why don't we just move forward? And I would like you to just give an introduction about yourself. Maybe Jen, you can tell us about your trajectory when it comes to education. You have a vast history, a lot of experience. You've been working with institutions in the higher education sector. You know a lot about technology. So why don't you just give us an introduction about yourself, where you come from, and what is your experience?
Sure, great. No, thank you. So, really, just to give you a brief introduction, I'm thrilled, obviously, to have the opportunity to share my insights and experience with all of you. I've spent, I would say, over the last 15 years in the education space, such as higher ed, and throughout my journey, I've had the privilege of collaborating with institutions such as Purdue West Lafayette and Wake Forest University in various roles. And whether that was with EdTech or marketing or program development or curriculum. So I have a wide, vast knowledge when it comes to higher education. And then previously I worked in the government sector. So really looking forward to diving into our conversation and exploring the importance of tailoring EdTech solutions to institutional needs. So thank you, Raul.
Thank you so much, Jen. Adel, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What is your background, your trajectory?
Yes, sir. So I've been in the online proctoring space since virtually its beginning way back in 2008 with Western Governors University, a little school out of Salt Lake City, Utah. That's nationwide right now. And then since then, so that was more than 2 years ago. I don't like to age myself here. I've worked with virtually every single online proctoring company for them, consultative or some kind of role. So I've been in the online proctoring and education technology space since 2008. Obviously, just when I told myself I was done with EdTech for a while, Sumati came calling, and I saw it right then and there. This is the next big step in the space. So, very very happy to be able to sit here, share my experiences and knowledge collected for well north of a decade in this space, specifically with you and all of our listeners.
Thank you for joining us, Adel. And we actually also feel really happy to have you in the team, right? So there's a lot of things that I want to ask you about your history in the online proctoring industry, but let's hold off for a moment. Let's move on to Walter. Walter, tell us a little bit about you.
So I've got about 25 years in higher education, strategic alliances, partnering with organizations all over the United States. I've transitioned from the higher education side over the proctoring side, specifically with Samadhi, because of Samadhi's passion and transparency and their great knowledge. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that in the podcast. But thank you for the opportunity to share it with all of the listeners that we have today. And I look forward to answering some more questions and getting this dialogue going.
See,
It's a,
Walter is not afraid to age himself, and that's where I chickened out to.
I'm
for
not.
sure.
I'm not. I just threw it right out there. I just threw it right out there.
For sure. Yeah, he's a very confident man. Thank you, Walter, for joining us. So I'd like to just let's make this a casual conversation, guys. So, but I want us to just do a deep dive at the Jen. You mentioned a couple of things there. You know, you worked in government. You have been in higher education. You have done a lot of marketing. From your perspective, why don't you tell us a little bit about how different it is when it comes to servicing government entities and also private education entities? Any particular insights when it comes to technology and education between those two separate segments?
I would say, believe it or not, and maybe our audience will understand this and agree. I think that there are some challenges, right? And that's both in the government sector and in higher education, is that essentially there is this long decision-making process, right? So when you think
Right.
about what are some of those barriers or unique challenges, right, to convince government or institutions to invest in new software or even new technology that's coming out, right? So you have that long decision making process. That's been my experience, or that resistance to change. So
Right.
there's often that deeply ingrained traditions and processes at the institution, and then more so bureaucracy or processes at the government level, right, or government entities. And so there may be that resistance to change, especially if there is that perception that new technology is disruptive, or it can be an additional burden on their workload, right? So I would say overcoming that resistance can be a significant challenge. And that's something that I've seen with both government and higher ed that they share, right?
Okay. Yeah. So it's so you're saying some resistance or adversity to change actually is present in both the higher education private sector and public sector, right?
Yes. Mhm.
And given the new trends in technology, Jen, do you foresee that it's even going to get worse, or like, for instance, things like ChatGPT, right, which is has been like some sort of a buzzword that has actually kept people very awake in at the beginning of the year, and I think still today. Do you think that would actually that type of technology would make institutions both in the public and private sector to continue to have some adversity to change? Or do you think that as time has passed, we see more willingness to actually do technology adoptions?
I would say that that is a part of it, but also now the market is demanding it, right? So as we saw
Right.
with COVID, really accelerated the need for technology a lot with institutions and even government entities, right? When you think about the various agencies, right? We're talking about, passports and things like that that had to be done remotely, right? So it really forced, I would say, a lot of institutions and government entities that were hesitant previously. And I think that they were able to see that it was not quite as scary as they thought it would be, right? Adopting that
Right.
technology. And
Right.
going forward, they're going to have to, because the market will demand it. Just like it is with hybrid like people working, remotely or hybrid. That has been something that's been demanded from employees. So I think we're going to see the same thing, and we have been with government and higher education.
Right. So you mentioned hybrid, right? Do you think that given COVID and obviously other trends around the world, do you think that both the public and private sector are understanding it better and are now more willing to adopt or create, hybrid models or hybrid programs in education? Do you think it's that the case, or would it be something not like that?
I think it is the case. I see that right now, if you even think of some of the institutions, like you have Harvard online, right? You have MIT offering courses online. So when you think about historically, that was not the case, right? To have some of those esteemed and well-renowned institutions now offering online or either hybrid, it's showing that they're going to continue to move forward with that because that is just what the market is demanding. I think that the time has passed for in-person instruction 100%. I think we're
Right.
even going to see with traditional education is going to move more to a hybrid model as well.
Yeah, I have this. That's the same perception, right? I'd like to hear from our other panelists, Adel and Walter. What are your thoughts about what Jen just mentioned about hybrid models being more welcome right now by both the public and private sector? Adel, any thoughts there?
Absolutely. I think the hybrid model it's not only just the future. It used to be. I've been in the industry long enough to remember when it was supposed to be the future. I don't think it's the future. It's the now at this point. As Jen mentioned eloquently there, the unfortunately COVID pandemic expedited the process for better or worse. I mean, worse in a lot of ways, but it is no longer an option for most institutions or most certification providers, most companies. So it is the hybrid model is here to stay. Now, something I always preach is this: anyone in our position, so in the online proctoring space specifically, as well as in EdTech in general, we always need to ensure that we understand our purpose. And our
Right.
purpose at the end of the day is that we are an extension
Mhm.
of our customers' brands. So we're not here to enforce our rules or regulations. We are here to execute the vision and expectations of our customers, our institutions, our universities. So yes, 100% agreed. There's no way we're going back. It is much too convenient for the end users to utilize this much more approachable and accessible approach that we have in place. So yes, I don't see how we ever roll it back.
Yeah, thank you, Adel. I agree with you, right? So we're going through this transformation. I think that both you and Jen, are pretty confident, and I am as well, that this transition or this transformation is happening. It already started before the pandemic, I believe. It just got accelerated, right? And with every transition, there's challenges coming, right? So, Walter, what are your thoughts about this transformation from fully in-person models into hybrid models or fully online? Any thoughts there?
I think both Jen and Adel covered most of that. Back to the high stake piece. I mean, during the pandemic, we were put in a place where the high stakes exams, stakes, or even more the certifications, CPR certifications were done online, or they had to find a way to do that, and they did that utilizing the computer
Right.
to get CPR certifications out, or the EMS world, the same thing with the EMS world. The life didn't stop; it had to continue. Okay, so now at this point, we're moving on and we're pressing on, and they're realizing that there's different ways. They, meaning the institutions, are realizing there's different ways in which they can access this education. They're not giving up on the online piece. They're actually embracing it, and they are going to a hybrid format. What I'm finding is a lot of the institutions that I'm talking to now just they love what we have to offer, in that it is online and it's so accessible to them, and it's so customizable to them.
Thank you, Walter. Yes, I think that online is really attractive nowadays, right? And it ties to that, the internet technology is the way in which these hybrid models are going to be successful. So in other words, my personal take there is that for any institution who's willing to go through this transition and accelerate through it, I think they also are going to have to be very mindful that they would need to have processes in which the technology adoption is going to be the easiest as possible, right? And that brings me to another topic related to this, right, man? And Jen, while you were talking, I was thinking about budget differences or budget challenges when it comes to a transformation like this. From your perspective, Jen, how do you see budget flexibility or availability when it comes to both private and public institutions in the education industry?
Well, when we talk about budget constraints, right, I think I'll go with I'll tackle the private higher education. Typically, they have limited budgets, right? And there's multiple competing priorities, right? So,
Right.
infrastructure maintenance, student services, and so forth. But one of the things that's very key for higher ed right now is student support and student retention. And so student outcomes is especially, I would say that's even a priority. And
Right.
so I think that in terms of, yes, there might be budget constraints, but within their budget, they're going to have to allocate funds to ensure academic integrity, because overall that's going to have an impact on student outcomes. And as we're seeing now in the US, there's such a focus on student outcomes and determining and ensuring that once a student graduates, that they're able to go out into the world and secure employment and utilize their education and represent that institution and their brand. So I think when it comes to the budget constraints, a lot of institutions are going to have to really look at what are those competing priorities and make that academic integrity, such as adopting a proctoring solution, their number one priority.
Of course, I agree with you 100%. Adult, would you complement that with anything, with any other ideas?
Well, I mean, Jen said it very well. I think at the end of the day, an education technology solution, whether it's in our space of online proctoring or any other space within EdTech, should be a complementary piece. It should not be a hurdle for most institutions
Correct.
or any institution to overcome. So it needs to be a complementary piece. It needs to be a piece that helps you advance. I don't want to talk about economics here very much, but retaining students is cheaper than recruiting students, if you think about it.
I agree.
And
Yeah.
one of the most important things when students choose institutions is the perceived brand of the institution, right? So we are in a space, not just in online proctoring, but in EdTech in general, where we have to always understand and remember, again, we are an extension of the institution's brand. When I say institution, I don't strictly mean that higher ed institutions. I mean certification providers, anyone in the industry. Sometimes I think EdTech companies forget that part. We're supposed to be a complementary piece, not a hurdle to overcome. So as such, when it comes to budget issues or budgeting issues in general, we always compare it, the cost of EdTech versus usually zero. The alternative is not zero. There's a cost associated with that as well. So I
Right.
hope that everyone goes through that process of understanding that it's not zero versus something, it's something versus something. And then the question is, where do I get most of my value from?
Well, thank you for that elaboration there, Adol. And just because you brought it up once again, I want to intentionally, talk about what it means when you say being an extension of the institution, whether it is a public higher education, private higher education, certification center, or even a government entity or a corporation, right? What does it mean? And let me just put in an introductory thought there, and then please, I would like you to elaborate a little bit on that. For me, when you say we have to remember that we are an extension, means that we are collaborating and helping an institution with their operation rather than just being a vendor and acting as a vendor, right? Can you elaborate on your thoughts and how you are approaching our customers here in Somali when it comes to us representing an extension of them?
Yeah. So there's a big difference between a vendor and a partner, right? We want to be a partner. I think any EdTech company, no matter what space within EdTech they're in, will want to be a partner with an institution. So one of the reasons that really gets me excited about Samadhi on a daily basis is that Samadhi is a product-based company. The whole concept, the whole company, the whole product was built based on customer feedback. In this case, internal customer feedback. And
That's
as
correct.
someone who has spent many years in product, I appreciate and understand why that's so important, right? So a lot of companies in the edtech space are built around the concept of let's build something so we can sell something so we can make money. Samadhi itself and lots of other companies in the edtech space were built as internal products to fulfill internal needs, right? So the customer feedback, if you are not listening to your customers, if you're not listening to your students, your test takers, whatever the end user is, then we're not doing our job.
I agree.
By we, I mean we as an edtech space in general.
I agree 100%, right? And you touched on a very important topic about, listening to our customers, right? For us, and I've been a part of the conversations with many of our customers, not only now, but since we started, right? And it's so important to receive the feedback and act on it, right? And that allows us as a partner and extension to be able to provide a service in the way that it is expected. And that is going to continue to change through time. So Walter, what are your thoughts about, what could be or what is the definition of the proper customer success experience when it comes to edtechs, particularly in education?
It's a really good question. I think it's about setting the correct expectations and listening to the customer. Number one, you have to listen to the customer and the customer's needs. And once you identify together as a partner, as Adele had mentioned, what the customer's needs are, creating a plan of action in order to live out that plan, the customer's plan, that is. I think that's the most important part of the entire piece is the communication that you have with your customer and solving the needs for the customer.
So it's interesting, right? Because everything that you just said right now is really not talking about the technology itself. It's talking about a service. It's talking about communication. It's talking about understanding an operation of an institution and the ed tech that is the partner servicing that institution as an operational extension, as we've been saying, right? So it's interesting, Walter. Do you see that the customer experience or customer success service is different from, when it comes to higher education versus certification centers, for instance? What would you say are the key differences, if any?
I think that I personally think that there isn't a difference because you're still satisfying the need of your customer. So the customer's needs are going to be a little bit different from one institution to another, but the plan of care or the structure in which you answer their needs, okay, the cadence, as I like to call it, is going to be the same because you're going to follow through with the needs of your customer, and that's where that partnership comes into place. And that customer needs to feel as though you're an extension of their brand, because we are internal. What we do is internal. The end customer, let's say it's the student in an educational setting, okay, doesn't see it as Samadhi. They see it as whatever that institution is acting.
Right.
So we have to be 100% on all the time. And that is one of the reasons I came to work with Samadhi, is because of the passion and the desire and the need for that perfection in what we do.
And when you mentioned the word cadence, right? Were you talking about an operational cadence that is to be established or needs to be established with customers? Can you elaborate on that a little bit more, please?
So the cadence is derived from the customer, so the customer's needs. So, and that's really what I was going after on that. It's a structure, a plan that you put together with your customer to satisfy their needs and yours, but utilizing what we have to offer. And I don't want to get too deep into it, but that is
Right.
precisely what it is. It's basically a plan from the beginning to the end of how we're going to make happen what we said we were going to make happen at the beginning of the agreement that we came into with the organization that we came in the agreement with. So that was
Thank
too.
If
That's
I
got
could
to be
add,
way too wordy.
if I can get add to that, so it's basically what we're saying is talk the talk, but let me see you walk the walk, and
Gotta
that's
show 'em.
why at Samadhi we're so confident with the product we have. We actually give away free trials. We say don't listen to us. I mean, listen to us, but at the end of the day, go take it for a test drive. I mean, who has bought a car without test driving it first? I know I
Exactly.
haven't. In some cases, multiple times. So that's the whole approach. The approach is don't just listen to what we say. Go take it for a spin. See if you like it. If you like it, let's have a chat.
I agree 100%. And so let's talk about something that that really called my attention, Adel. You said you've been in the industry since over a decade already, since 2008, right? And quite honestly, in 2008, even as an entrepreneur, the founder of Somalia, I had no idea that there was a proctoring industry. Can you give us your insight and your everything that you have learned and see on how this industry has evolved in the last 10 years, right? I think it would be very valuable for all of us to listen to your experience in this industry. Tell us what are the key most important topics that have evolved from your perspective.
Yes, of course. So a little background. So I kind of stumbled into the EdTech space myself, right? So before EdTech, I was an aspiring architect and a forex trader. Turned out I wasn't very good at either of those things. So I stumbled into the EdTech space at Western Governors University in 2008. So a couple of things that have happened in that space because I was lucky enough to be on the forefront of it because WGU at that time was looking into online proctoring solutions. I will not mention the companies that at that point we were working with, but I will never forget a quote from an old boss or previous boss of mine, president of Western Governors, Bob Mendenhall. He said, most people think that online education, online learning means you do everything you do in person and then you put a webcam to it and put it online.
Correct.
That's not the same thing. So I
Exactly.
think it took us a little bit longer to also understand that the same thing applies to testing. It's not you're testing the way we all grew up testing, probably in the classroom with the teacher watching you, but you have to apply different technologies, approaches, capabilities to it. So the evolution of it has been extraordinary. The evolution of it has been from let's just put a camera on you with nothing else, and that satisfies everything there is. Then there was a period of revolt to say, well, you don't get to watch me while I take my test in my home. Then there was a period of the opposite, which is, well, you can always go to the classroom. Thus, the hybrid approach that we talked about earlier. I think where we are settling at right now is here's what's the most important thing when it comes to testing, specifically online testing, overall testing. It is the verification of competence. You're verifying that the person who's taking the test is the person who is supposed to be there. You're verifying that the person who's taking the test is not cheating, for the lack of a better word. I hate that word, but it's not cheating during the test. Means they don't have previous knowledge of the test. Means they don't have third-party actors answering their questions for them, et cetera, et cetera. Where we are at today is that what we are understanding is the human factor in the online proctoring space is still one of the most important assets assets that there are in the online proctoring space. What we have also identified, this is why I'm so proud of the work Samadhi is doing, that the human proctor can be drastically assisted through AI technology, right? So now you can monitor more people at the exact same time, also making it more accessible to all institutions because it drives the cost down, right?
Exactly.
So that's kind of where this is going. At the end of the day, I keep saying this. We need to be an extension. Every EdTech solution needs to be an extension of the brand they're serving. Ideally, if a university is selling Samadhi or any other EdTech solution in the marketplace as part of their overall solution, they have to remember that their end users, their students or certification test takers, should not even remember our name. They should not know we exist. I don't mean that for Samadhi. I mean that for any EdTech company. No one
Great.
should know they exist, as we all should be extension of their brands. But yeah, in the online proctoring space, there has been a lot of movement in the past. Well, let's just say more than a decade. But yes, it's been significantly more than a decade now that I actually can remember.
You revealed your start date, but
I have
thank
a,
you.
I have a question for you, Adel. So,
Yes,
with
ma'am.
your experience in proctoring and just early on 2008, would you also say, and I've experienced this, right, in my conversations with institutions and government entities while at Sumati and talking about our proctoring solutions, that academic integrity is at the forefront, but have you seen that evolve over time with your experience at WGU?
Yes, absolutely. So I will not get into the competency-based education model because there's that. But at the end of the day, the most important thing for any institution is the verification of competency, right? So if you think about it, why? Let's just go into the universities for a second. Why are certain universities more renowned than others? It's because when you graduate from them, you're guaranteed a better job afterwards or better access to opportunity. Let's say
Correct.
that. Um, the easiest way for any institution to lose their credibility is through a loss of credibility in the verification of competency, right? So it's a never-ending cycle. So, Jen, to answer your question directly, yes, there in those more than 10 years, um, it's there has been an absolute, I don't want to say 180, but a good 140-degree turn
Yeah.
in the higher ed space, and I would say a 180-degree turn in the certification space of understanding what proper edtech solutions executed the right way, of course, mean to institutions and organizations.
That was thank you for the question, Jen. I think that expands very well, the concept or the importance of validating of verifying the competencies acquired by students all over. And I think that applies not only to universities, but also to any institution that provides a diploma or a certification on an acquired knowledge, right? And Adel, you mentioned things that are really important, right? Verification of competency where the human factor in the proctoring process continues to play an important role. Regardless of the existence of AI, the human factor, from your perspective, if I understood you correctly, continues and will continue to play an important role, right? Um, Even with instruments or with technology like ChatGPT, Adel, do you think, and even with the advanced AI offering that Sumari has, do you think that will continue to still be needed when and I mean the human factor?
So, a couple of things there. So, I think there will always be a necessity in a certain area, in certain spectrum for human assistance in these areas. I also want to make sure we understand that not all assessments, not all tests are created equal, right? So, For example, midterm quiz at a university is probably usually not treated with the same scrutiny as a PMP certification, for example. Right. So those have they carry different weights. I read this research many years ago that talked about if you go to a high end store like a Neiman Marcus, and you will see certain items just open on the floor that you can touch and feel and try and wear, and then other items are locked behind the glass. In the case of Utah, I will speak about go to liquor stores, for example. You have the $25 bottle that's just sitting there on the shelf. The $1,700 bottle is locked behind the shelf. So I think we have to understand that not all items in the shopping world are the same or equal, and also not all assessments carry equal weight in the space,
Agreed.
if that makes sense. So I do not believe that the human factor will ever fully uh, be eliminated from the testing or test delivery space. I mean, if you think about it, all of our technologies are built with humans as well. So there's always a human factor. But the live proctoring aspect, there will always be a need for it, a necessity for it. But at the same time, we also have to understand that the vast majority of tests and assessments in the marketplace are pretty well served with a well executed piece of online proctoring technology. This is where AI, which I think is one of the more overused terms in the marketplace, but we actually do have proper AI, but it's mostly machine learning in the marketplace. That is extremely important. If nothing else, we can never say. I remember there was a company in the industry a few years ago that said we are cheat proof. There's no such thing as cheat proof. There will never be such a thing as cheat proof. Okay. But what we do is what the ed tech industry in the testing space specifically needs to do and continue doing is put in preventative measures as much as possible without
Correct.
ever trying to be completely cheat proof. So, yes, always going to be a human factor in there. But I do think with the evolution and advancement of AI and technology in general, we're making steps towards it. And I have a feeling Chat GPT, I've already seen 3, 4 different solutions in the marketplace for it. So that's every time the world, what's that saying? Every time the world makes, no, every time the world makes something idiot proof, it develops a better idiot.
That's correct. Yeah. and
Great. Good message.
and I was thinking as you were speaking about some words that Walter mentioned, right? About higher stakes exams and how it's important to put proctoring for higher stakes exams that are done remotely, of course. So, Walter, from your perspective and from your experience, Walter, understanding obviously how we have been able to understand assessments into categories, right, from low stakes, middle stakes to high stakes. When it comes to those three levels, what is could be your recommendation, Walter, in terms of involving or not a human, and what could be the differences for an institution to consider proctoring options with or without humans?
If I am I coming on? If I hear you correctly, um, I think that as Adel had mentioned, the human factor is essential in all proctoring throughout. High stakes, you're looking at CPA exams. You're looking at even Adel mentioned the PMP exam. You've got the high stake exams where you're going to need that human factor. Live proctoring is huge. You've got the live proctors. So I'm not 100% sure of your question, but I think if that's what it is, I've answered it.
Yes, correct. And when it comes to, yeah, well, I was trying to create a conversation around how do we recommend institutions could approach other types of exams, like for instance low stakes, right? Not necessarily a midterm, not necessarily a graduation exam, right, or a certification, because we see in the industry, right, many providers that are only focused on, for instance, lockdown browser, right? and also others that are now really focused and strong on AI only, right? And what we're saying here is that the human factor is always going to be needed. And then Al brings the topic about, there are different flavors of assessments or exams, if I may, right? So I wanted to get your thoughts in terms of how would you recommend an institution to consider the possibility of acquiring proctoring solutions when it comes to their complete spectrum of possible assessment types.
So there's different ways you can look at that, but I mean, when you're talking the lower stake exams like the like quizzes throughout, we've got several organizations that look at the quiz factor, and at that point, you're monitoring those exams from a faculty member in that piece. But I'm not understanding your question. Is really what it is.
So can I take a quick crack at that, please, Raul?
Yeah.
So here's my number one suggestion or recommendation. Technology, not just as it pertains to the delivery, but also integration. You have to have training internally, externally, communication, all of those different things. The worst thing anyone can do, in my opinion, is to lock themselves in to one solution forever at a single price. I think what most institutions, and again, by institutions, I mean not just higher education institutions, I mean K through 12, I mean higher ed, I mean certifications, everyone else, government, you want to give yourself options, right? So you want to give yourself options to be able to turn on a dime. So maybe for 3 months, I like this solution, but 3 months later, I want to change the solutions. Maybe not the provider, but the solution itself. So you do not want to put yourself in a corner from which you cannot step out. And now you're cornered,
Right.
now you have no options. So this is one of those things that I really like about the Samadhi product, even before I joined Samadhi. The Samadhi product, Laureate's Samadhi product, it gives you flexibility. So maybe I'll start with one solution today, but I feel like changing my capabilities and solutions in a week or two, or a month or two, maybe 6 months. It does not require a brand new integration, a brand new investment of time and money and resources, right? To switch providers or switch capabilities. Do not lock yourself in. The the
Correct.
the the market and necessities are changing. You mentioned Jet GPT a few times. Who could have seen that coming 12 months ago?
That's right.
So what's going to happen 12 months from now? Right. So I would encourage everyone, all the institutions, all the providers, to ensure that you are in a position where whatever happens 6, 12, 18 months from now, you're not in a position where you have to go back and reinvest the time, money, resources to get a new solution.
I
And you
agree
bring
with
up
you.
oh, sorry. I was
Go
going to
ahead.
say,
Sorry.
you bring up a good point. When you think about Samadhi, we offer a modular product structure, right? So it really allows for institutions and government entities, organizations, so forth. They can select the features they need, but they can also, we can build a solution that aligns, say, with their standardized requirements, and then they can take advantage of those unique features when needed, right? So to your point, they may start off with maybe just a lockdown browser, and then find in 3 months they need live proctoring with enhanced AI capabilities, right? And we're so modular and customizable that we can do that for them easily.
Exactly, Jen and Adel, and that's where I think I wanted to touch on. And Walter, I didn't mean to confuse you with the question, but basically was, allowing our audience to understand the flexibility that we have as a solution, right? A service provider, right? And we can guide an institution in this transformational process that goes from no proctoring solution all the way to a very robust adoption with a human proctor enhanced with AI, right? So I think that the message is clear, right? You guys worded out perfectly in terms of what can an institution expect from the services that we provide, right? And then moving forward, I wanted to ask a very short question to the three of you. How relevant do you think that video recording is and will be, given the fact of the need of a human proctor? Jen, can you go first?
Sure. I think that video recording, while there is that live proctor component, right? But in terms of evidence, right, and being able to have that for accreditation purposes or so forth,
Right.
I think that that is extremely important. And it's one thing I think that, Sumati really excels at is thinking about the whole picture in terms of not just delivering one product and one standardized solution. It's we have a plethora of features and we can customize that for what their needs are. And, video, I think recording is just one of those features that we're starting to see come up with a lot of institutions and government entities that is really important for them in terms of being able to provide evidence or maintain that data for a certain period of time to ensure that their programs are meeting certain requirements when it comes to accreditation.
Yeah, I agree with you. Adel, any other thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, Jen said it very well. So I think we have to remember a couple of different things here, right? So I'll say it again. Verification of competency is one of the, if not the most important aspects of education, whether it's higher ed, K through 12, government, or other kind of certification. So the verification of competency requires those kinds of steps where
Evidence.
you have proof
True.
and
Yes.
you have evidence. The other thing we also have to remember at all times is that we have to be very cognizant of privacy laws. So we at Somalia are GDPR not just compliant but GDPR certified at this point. So we have to balance those two things. We have to understand that we are at the forefront of the verification of competency delivery part, but at the same time, we apply or are compliant with and certified by the highest levels of standards and security. Because the only downside of technology, and I'm a technologist, I love all technology. The more, the better. Give it to me.
That's
Is
right.
loss of privacy. And walking that fine line is extremely important. I keep saying we are an extension of the brand of our customer. We are. But I promise you, we will not cross that line, even if anyone asks us to, because we
Of
want
course.
to. We want to make sure that we walk that fine line. So yes, verification of competency and security, also security and privacy protection at the exact same time. Those are not mutually exclusive.
Yep.
I agree 100% with you. And you touched on two other very important topics like privacy law and everything related to security from an IT perspective. But staying just before we jump into another topic, Walter, what are your thoughts about video recording? How relevant do you think it is, and how important or how useful would institutions find it?
I believe it's extremely important, and it's something people are talking about more and more now at all the conferences that we're going to
Right.
in EdTech. It's huge. Matter of fact, a lot of the institutions are unaware of all of the features that are available to them in the online proctoring area, and the video piece is huge. I don't think that's going to go away. My esteemed colleagues Adel and Jen touched on pretty much everything else, but I think the biggest piece and the fear right now out there, right, is that privacy. So you're talking
Right.
about video, you're talking about, I mean, even the biometric facial recognition is a piece that people bring up the privacy and how important privacy is to them. And I know we embrace it as an organization, Samadhi does, but it's one of those key areas that came up a lot at the conferences that we've been at lately in the ed tech world, talking to the educators and the fears that they have out there. So I think we could roll right into the privacy piece now.
Well, I
Raul?
was going to say, I think that's what really makes Sumati unique is we're very transparent as an organization, right? And that is key and something that, I would say within the higher ed and government sectors that they're looking for, right? Transparency, communication, not only for them as an institution, but for their students or their employees and so forth, right?
Right.
So we're not only transparent in terms of what our policies are, but we collaborate and work with institutions to ensure that that is conveyed to the end user on their end.
Exactly. You guys represent the Samadhi brand so well with everything that you have just said, right? So it is. I think I'm really glad to see that you're able to give a message to our audience to get to know us a little bit better in terms of how we, manage security and deal with data, right? With data collection. I think it's important to us. I won't add a lot to it. We could go into an immense rabbit hole if we start talking about data protection and privacy, right? We can have a separate episode of this podcast related to that particular topic and how we in Sumati actually deal with that, right? But I think you touched on the very important aspect of it and how we deal with it, right? So I appreciate your thoughts there. So we're approaching the end of the podcast. I think 51 minutes already have passed, and they have gone really fast for me because we've talked about many different points, and I have felt so energized about this conversation. But before we leave, I would like to ask each of you guys to have some closing words or closing remarks that you would like to say for our audience related to the topics that we covered. So why don't we start with you, Jen, please?
Sure. No, I just want to thank you for your time today, inviting me to join the podcast. And I've had a great time with this thoughtful discussion with my colleagues as well. And I just wanted to reiterate, as we discussed with, about Sumati, that we not only address the limitations of the current marketplace, but we also strengthen, your brand's reputation, right? Whether that's an institution, government entity, or organization, really for integrity and quality. And really want to stress that we do that by offering a comprehensive, cost effective, and flexible approach. And that it goes beyond the traditional methods that I think Adel talked about, right, with his experience going back to 2008. So I just want to leave you with this that Sumati is more than just a product, we're an extension of your brand. And, we look forward to, potentially having further discussions with those that are watching today.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
Raul.
Jen. Appreciate your words there. Adel, you're next. Any closing remarks?
Well, Jen just stole half my thunder, so we'll see. We'll see what else we can do here. But no, I mean, I will reiterate some of the things I've said before. And so, at the end of the day, the let's forget about online proctoring for just a second. Let's talk about EdTech in general. EdTech is not supposed to be a barrier. It's supposed to be an enabler and an assistant to the delivery of knowledge to people, right? An access to opportunity, if you want to say it that way. Sumati, and again, Jen stole my thunder here. Uh, Forever is going to be positioned as an extension of the brand. No, we're not the judge and executioner. We're the party that executes what the institution puts forth. That, and I really think that should be the role of just about every um, ed tech organization in the marketplace. Now, when we talk about verification of competency, we're also talking about security, which means protection of assets. Protection of assets means protection of question items and a lot of money invested in there. What separates us versus our competitors in this space is the variety of options. It's a buffet at this point, right? So it's a variety of options. You can do a lot of different things with it. We do not enforce our rules upon our customers. Our customers ask us to execute the rules they have in place. At the very same time, let's talk about two other things real quick. One is accessibility. When we talk about accessibility, we're not talking about only a UI that is friendly to everyone that could potentially enter it. We're also talking about a price point. I think we often forget that price is oftentimes the number one barrier to accessibility. The $300,000 Ferrari down the street is not accessible to me because I'm not going to spend it, right? So that immediately goes out the window. So accessibility, price is part of accessibility. Let's not forget about that. And the other thing I wanted to mention, the last thing I wanted to mention is privacy and privacy protection. So while we do all of these great security things at the exact same time, we also ensure that privacy is at the very highest point. We do not retain data. We see ourselves as an extension of our customers, and we're not Big Brother. Let's say it that way. Very secure, very accessible, not Big Brother. And I'm sorry about my dog just sitting in the background.
Not a worry. Thank you so much, Ado. I think that based on what you both have said, I think we have a very interesting topics for next episodes in the podcast, right? But last but not least, Walter, any closing remarks that you would like to leave our audience with?
Definitely, there's always closing remarks. You know,
Of
here I
course.
am. I'm on screen. So first of all, I want to thank you. It's always good to get together with my esteemed colleagues and yourself.
Thank
Um,
you. Likewise.
one of perfect. One of the biggest things that I know we talked a lot about Samadhi. One of the things that we didn't mention is Samadhi is a worldwide solution, and we're in 7 languages. This is my infomercial. I'm kidding. Um, being an extension of your business is important. Being transparent and highly modular, which is customizable to your needs, is huge. I love working with this organization and with all of our clients. I think it's a lot of fun. I can tell that everybody that's watching this has already noted that we have a lot of fun doing what we do, which is changing the lives of others. I just want to thank you for allowing this space and this time because it's been a lot of fun, and I'm sure it's been educational for those watching.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Jen, Adel, and Walter for your participation. I think that the topics that you guys covered, that we which you covered the topics was incredibly insightful, right? So I really I thank you once again for your participation. And for our audience, I also want to thank you all for listening throughout already 57, 58 minutes of this conversation. I think that we covered a lot of topics, and there's a lot more to cover when it comes to proctoring, when it comes to all the non-technology related items that involve a proctoring process, right? So we will make sure here in Samadhi that we will bring those topics into conversations here in the podcast. So I would like to thank you all for your time, for joining us once again in this episode. Please remember to join us every single Wednesday at 3. Sorry, it's 1:30 Eastern Time, United States, and we will be bringing more topics. Please feel free to write to us. Feel free to reach out to us through our social media channels. We are in LinkedIn, we are in YouTube, we are in Facebook as well. Let us know your thoughts about the podcast. Let us know about the topics that you would like us to cover, and we will be happy to prepare an episode just related to the topics that are of most importance to all of you. So with that said, once again, thank you all for joining us, and looking forward to having you in another episode of the Samadhi We Connect podcast. Thank you and goodbye for now.